That is so much proj. I can't even play the game proj. I mean, we tank it fine. Like those are some mods. Those are some mods. Today we are going to be going over our CI Trickster Flicker Strike build. With the rise in availability of items and crafting, people always lean into Trickster for the insane tankiness that Trickster provides. And so we're going to go ahead and showcase a cloistered map on a 16.5, and then we'll go ahead and we won't delirious it because it won't let us delirious a cloistered corrupted map. That's okay. This is a really juicy map. It is specifically killing a rare marked for death, meteor on flasks, extra maximum energy shield, skills chain. The poison in the cast doesn't really affect us. That's not too bad. Cloistered maps are fairly deadly just by the fact that they are cloistered mobs, which are incredibly strong. So we'll go ahead and run this map. Now we are running 80 div and gear crafted maybe. So not low budget, not high budget, somewhere in the middle. Let me go ahead and make sure that we have all of our skills on our bar again because we just changed up a few things. We're missing our Vol Haste. Small things matter. A Vol Haste is a nice cooldown button just to get through really, really rippy packs. And so you should always consider having a Vol Haste in your setup. It's also great for just moving faster. And we aren't reserving haste. We are just using the Vol version of haste. Now, once we get started in here, the strategy for the build is fairly simple. You're going to utilize Vol skills for two things. Number one, we use Vol Smite to generate an aura that allows us to do a lot of additional damage. And we also use that to fix our frenzy charges in the event that we run out of frenzy charges for any reason. The second thing that you're going to do with your Vol skills is Vol Flicker Strike, which is useful whenever you run out of frenzy charges, as another way to immediately get a free frenzy and generate frenzy charges again. And so that's how you're going to utilize those Vol skills. Haste is just a buff to your damage and a buff to your clear speed and movement. And you can see Vol Flicker Strike over here will let you very quickly rush through and do a ton of damage to a lot of mobs. And I mean, we just rip through everything. We're POBing like 400 million DPS with everything running, which realistically means that we're hitting for somewhere between 50 to 100 mil real time, full time, all the time DPS, which is great for the build. As far as tankiness goes, we'll do two things. Number one, Mercenary is a huge portion of our power, but Mercenary is not all of our power. So we'll send him back home so you can see what it's like without the Mercenary. And number two, we need to see what it's like when you need to tank. It's incredibly durable. Tons of recovery from Aegis, tons of recovery from Leech when we need Leech. And even without our Mercenary, like we're ripping through this stuff with like 30 to 40 million DPS. Like it doesn't matter. If your Merc dies because you're not paying attention, just finish the map. You'll do it 10% slower, maybe, because you're already limited in the speed of your build rather than limited with the damage of the build. We've got a big old Soul Eater over here. Goes down in just a couple seconds. Now, from a bossing perspective on the build, we are a good bosser, but not a perfect bosser. Flicker Strike has a ramp time on it for single target damage, especially when you're just going into an uber boss encounter and you're going in with no rage and no charges and no nothing. So On Uber bosses, we're usually 4 to 5 seconds on a phase, or 3 to 4 seconds on a phase, depending on how strong the boss is. And 3 to 4 seconds to 2 to 3 seconds on a non-Uber boss. So very good bossing damage. And we have a bossing example at the beginning of the video, as well as a super juicy double risk modded abyss with like 8 million creatures on the screen just face taking everything. So the build runs good. Now let's take a look at the POB for the build. POB is fairly simple. You've got 2 entries for the build. You've low budget, which is probably 20 divs. I really don't give a fuck if it costs you 25 or 50 or whatever your shopping crafting experience is. It's an estimate of about 20 divs. That is for you and your mercenary. Your mercenary needs to be equipped with negative 100% lightning res in the low budget build at least, and needs to have 2 scepters that have Wrath Aura on them. Now, getting the scepters with Wrath Aura is quite possibly the easiest thing you could ever do in this entire game, but we'll explain it real quick just so that people know. First thing you need to do, you need to get a scepter. So we're going to need one-hand weapon, and it's going to need to be a scepter. And I don't care what it is, as long as it's not an alternating scepter. You don't want Secrets of Suffering, so you just grab a scepter. Make sure it's at least eye level 80. And then you're going to need this scepter to be, I have forgotten. No, Crusader. We're going to need a Crusader the scepter. Now you can either buy a Crusader orb and Crusader the scepter, or you can buy a Crusader scepter. Either one works. You're going to want to scour it, you're going to transmute it, and you're going to alt spam it until you see increased effect of wrath. This could be 20, it could be 30, it could be 40, it doesn't matter. You're just going to keep doing this until you see increased effect of wrath. And ideally you want tier 1 increased effect of wrath. And once you get to a tier 1 increased effect of wrath, you're going to go ahead and sorry, we muted for a second. When you get to this part of the build, you're just going to craft on chance to ignite and fire damage. Now, if you're in the high budget build, you would craft 3 mods and chance to ignite with fire damage plus fire damage with spells. In the low budget build, you're just going to have the helmet have the Searing Exarch added fire damage to spells. But you want Ignite and Wrath. Those are the only 2 things you care on the scepters. He needs to dual wield scepters. It's very straightforward. Now, the rest of the gear on the Mercenary is going to be a Perkle's Toe and then a Culling Strike Gloves. Culling Strike Gloves are done the exact same way. You get gloves, you slam a Warlord orb into them, you alt roll them until they have Culling Strike, you regal them, you exalt them, and you throw some like life or life regen on them. You just want something a little bit tanky. All this stuff can also be just purchased, but the crafting part of it is very, very straightforward. So your Mercenary is going to have 2 scepters with Wrath plus Ignite, a helmet that has fire damage to spells, you're going to have gloves that have Culling Strike on them, and you're going to have a Dorianyes with 2 negative lightning res rings. Your boots are just going to help fill out your resistances, life and life regen on your Mercenary. And then all of your Mercenary stats on how it works are going to be listed down in here. Now, on to the items in the build. We are using a jeweled foil. That is a very easy craft. We have a video for the craft that I'll link down at the bottom of the video. The cheapest way to craft this sword is get a T2 fractured foil with 1.6 attack speed and crit strike multiplier. That's like jeweled, spiraled, fancy. There's a couple of options. Once you have a fractured T2 or T1 lightning, you're just going to zeal spam it until you get crit strike chance or crit strike chance and or crit strike multi, but preferably just crit strike chance. And then your craft hits can't be evaded. The other crafts are in the video. You can watch that and figure those out. Next, we want to Aegis Aurora. This is a shield. It's a couple, like 10, 15, 20 casts. I don't know. You want a circlet that has some resistances, an open prefix for intelligence, and like 300 something energy shield. These are like 5 or 10 casts. Restless Ward Carnal Armor is going to be 5 chaos, plus you're going to have to 6 link it, or you can live with a 5 link. We need gloves that have some energy shield resistances and an open prefix for attack speed, or you can find one with attack speed already on it. We do need Endurance Charge, Ralakesh, a Replica, Badge of the Brotherhood. These are both 1 to 2 divs. You need a Taming Ring that has elemental resistance on it. These are cheap. We need a Warrior's Legacy Ring. These are cheap. Try to get one with good strength and melee damage, and then augment it for strength. Like, these are dirt cheap. Arn's Anguish is like 2 chaos. We need some flasks. We need some cheap jewels that have like useful things on them, like attack speed and energy shield. And we need 1 jewel that has flat fire damage and flat cold damage. It could be to attacks or to sword attacks or whatever. You have to have a source of flat fire damage and flat cold damage. If you accidentally had an extra prefix and you got colder fire on your sword, then you don't need it on the jewel. The reason you have to have that is we scale elemental damage massively. And so we hit really hard with a very tiny amount of elemental damage. Now, relative to our lightning damage, this is nothing. However, this damage is how we're going to scorch, brittle, and sap targets. If we don't have cold, we can't brittle. And if we don't have fire, we can't scorch. And so it's very important that you have some flat, cold, and fire in the build somewhere. And so this is how you're going to get your items set up. Fairly straightforward. If you have any questions over any of this, please come by Twitch. I am happy to answer them. On to our skills. In the low budget, we are running Shield Charge, Faster Attacks, Molten Strike, Cast, and Damage Taken. We're running Assassin's Mark with Mark on Hit and Frost Blink for additional movement. We're running Punishment with more duration with a Hydrosphere and an Arcanist brand. This is something that is just quality of life. You drop the brand, it curses the target. Hydrosphere is a lot of bonus damage. With Flicker Strike, it's not as much because we are running an attack speed tincture. And so the attack speed tincture makes our attack speed crazy high. And you're not getting as much out of Hydrosphere unless you put it on an Arcanist brand. The Arcanist brand will resummon it continuously and let you get an extra hit in periodically. It's not a lot of damage. I'm estimating probably 5 to 10% damage, but we don't have it included in the spreadsheet because it is too unpredictable to really say this is damage out of your build for this version of the build. Then we're running a Vol Smite with Vol Haste, more duration, again, so that we have some Vol skills that cost no mana and use no frenzy charges so that we can generate frenzy charges in a fight if we do run out. You can also use a shield swap with 2 minimum frenzy charges, but I found that the Vols cover the bases just fine. Then, of course, we have Flicker Strike with multi-strike volatility, elemental damage with attacks, energy leech, and close combat. If you can't color your armor right, like you can give up elemental damage with attacks, and you just take the next most important link in here, which would be like increased critical damage or hypothermia if you don't have a red and you have a green or a blue. And so linking is very, very straightforward on the build. And then finally, on auras, we are running Grace with Enlighten, Tempest Shield, and Summon Skitterbots. These are a requirement to run. The Enlighten is not a requirement to run. However, if you have an Enlighten, you are going to have to give up some damage somewhere in order to get the reservation efficiency. So typically, I'll take these 2 points off down here. And then we come up here and we go mana reservation efficiency here. And we get 12% increased mana reservation here. And then we would have to give up probably this damage node is our least valuable node on the tree. And then that would get us to a point where we are very comfortable. And so you have a few options if the Enlightens are too expensive, but I think they are right now down to like 1 div and some change for a level 3 Enlighten, so that shouldn't be a problem either. Now, as far as our passive tree goes, you're going to be zooming around the passive tree, picking up your spell suppression, going through here on Soul Thief, going up here to Whispers of Doom. We are running a Rune Graft of Treachery on here. This is where we're getting this 15% increased mana reservation efficiency. Whispers of Doom allows us to use a mark and a punishment. Move down here, pick up Mark Mastery with 10% chance to gain frenzy charges, Sword Mastery with 8% chance to gain frenzy charges, 25% crit multi, 5% instant leech. You're going to take as much spell suppression as you need off of this tree to cap your spell suppression. It'll depend on your accessibility and your gear. And so at this point, in order for us to cap our spell suppression, we need to have 3 points spent down here. We have Bleeding Mastery down here. We have our Cluster Jewel going to Secrets of Suffering here. We have Block Mastery, which is 1% chance to block spell damage, and then 1% to block attack damage per 5 on the shield. And then finally down to Disciple of Slaughter. Now, if you are under level 96, just getting going, then you're going to be pulling crit chance off first go. You're going to be pulling Frenzy Charge down here as your second option. You're going to be pulling off Survivability here as your third option, etc., to get down to the level that you need to be at. The things that you cannot get rid of are Mark Mastery, Sword Mastery, Secrets of Suffering, Bleeding Mastery, Attack Mastery, and your blocks. Those are critical to the build, so you can pull from everywhere else. And if you're below level 85, you can even go so far as to start pulling spell suppression out of the build. And so you can start running this build at level 73 comfortably. $72, $71. I think anything under 69 is going to start to feel really sketchy. So that's what it's going to look like as you progress through the leveling of your character, if you're doing a newer character and getting started on this. Now, the build itself does have an upper limit of about, I would say, 600 or 700 million DPS, which is a solid upper limit. The POB for my current in-game character is like 482. Now, this is a little bit of a lie right now. We do need to, anytime you're importing a character, go in and fix your tincture. This is a very finicky import, and so it pulls in this 21% increased effect, but it has already been added. And as you can see, that's like 30 million DPS here. So make sure that you are editing that out of your POB every time you pull your character in. You can see it's pulled out over here on this one. And so that is important to make sure that you're accurate in your damage estimates, but an upper limit of 455 million. And we do have a guard skill up on this right now, but we are sitting at a 31k fizz hit and 50 to 60k cold hits. Now I did change my armor in the upper end budget of the guild, because the upper budget of the build, because critical strikes and 16.5s are way too common, and you have to have crit strike avoidance or crit strike reduced damage. And since we have 8 endurance charges and they're all the time from Ralakesh, we can run the Horror Essence mod, and then we run a couple of tattoos for crit, which are very cheap. We run one there, and then we have 10% on our Lethal Pride here. Make sure that you are looking for a Lethal Pride that has some crit damage reduction if you want to take advantage of that. And so this is the body armor we're going to be using. I just haven't finished crafting on this because it only has 448 energy shield. And so we can equip that here though, and you can see that this will give us our survivability, and we still have very, very solid defenses on the build. Now, if you have any questions over this build, feel free to come by the channel and ask. It will continue to be updated and changed periodically. I just put it together yesterday, so it's very, very new, but we have had a lot of fun with it, and so I wanted to get it out there for y'all to enjoy. Thank y'all very much for watching. Y'all have a wonderful day. Peace.